How's it going? And welcome to episode 76 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter at On the Wire Pod. And if you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, please take a second to let us know what you think. I am Adam Howe. You can follow me on the Twitter at 80grade. That's all spelled out. And I'm once again joined by my co-host Kevin Hasting, who should be followed on the Twitter himself at Hasting Kevin. And Kevin, there's four more of these. There's only four more FAAB periods to go. First of all, can you believe it? And second of all, like, how comfortable are you with any one particular league that you have going into the stretch run?
Oh, wow. No, first of all, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. We spend all of this time throughout the off season building up, and we can't wait for the season to start. And then once it does, it flies by. In spite of the grind it can be at times, and sometimes it's almost overwhelming, especially if you play in several leagues or even more than several. It can really bear down on us a little bit. But then to think about it, we just had the All-Star break. The season
feels like it was just
started
yesterday. Right.
Just started right before that, it feels like. No, I can't believe that we're this close to the end. And I'm not comfortable in any league. I have multiple leagues that I have a chance to win, but by no means is it over. None of mine. So this is going to be an exciting 3.5 weeks for me personally. I have a lot of leagues where I have a chance, but none where it's been decided. Right. At least not in my favor.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, I had two leagues that I was just blowing away. I don't even remember what it was. They were 12 teamers. They were whatever. And I was blowing them away. By September rolled around, I'm like, not that I wasn't paying attention to them anymore, but I was sitting pretty.
You were counting your money.
That. Yeah, I was not. I have not felt that in some time, and I miss it a lot. I'm leading, I think, 2 leagues right now, but there's no comfort level whatsoever. Let's find out that same comfort level with our guest, who has plenty of opportunities, as he is in 26 leagues, if I'm not mistaken. My pleasure right now to welcome to the show Britton Allan. He's going to help us break down some FAAB options in the first of the last 4 FAAB periods we have in the rest of the month, in September and October. He can be heard regularly on the 3 is a Magic Number podcast as part of the Triple Play Fantasy family of podcasts. Check out his work there on the Triple Play Fantasy YouTube page by clicking on the link in the show description. Britton, thanks so much, man, for joining us. How are is it 26? Did I get that number right?
It's 26 leagues. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Kevin, for having me on your podcast. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite podcasts to listen to every single week. And so I'm in 26 NFBC leagues, and I was looking at it today, and I'm in first place in 1 league. So that's 1 for 26.
But you have a chance to cash in other leagues. Okay.
True. I've got some 4th, some 5th, things like that. But in 1 league, I'm in first. And it's because, coincidentally, in that 1 league, I drafted 1 player that I didn't draft in every single other league. Can you guess which player I drafted in the league I'm in first place in?
Is it a 12 or 15? Which style is it?
It's a 15 draft champions, 50-round draft and hold.
Oh, man, that's a good one.
It's an early guy. I'm going with Aaron Judge.
That's a good guess. I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to go a rookie. I'm going to go Michael Harris.
Those are great guesses. It is Aaron Judge, who, as of today, is batting 304 to be exact, Mr. Judge. I want to make sure I get that right. 55 home runs, 16 stolen bases. This is Barry Bonds 2001 type situation, or Alex Rodriguez or something. And I was looking at that draft because it was the first DC I did. It was like Thanksgiving weekend of last year. And I was so mad that I drafted him. I was so mad because I wanted Teoscar Hernandez and Yordan Alvarez in the 3rd round. I drafted Corbin Burns in the 1st round and then somebody, but in the 3rd round in my queue, I had Teoscar Hernandez. I had Yordan Alvarez, and they went back to back. And then there's Aaron Judge, and I'm like, oh man, I wanted a power outfielder in my third round. I'm like, God, I don't want Aaron Judge. I was like, all right, fine, whatever. Click that button, and now I'm in first.
Yep.
So thank you, Teoscar and Jordan Truthers, because I'm better lucky than good, as my father used to say, and I believe that wholeheartedly. So.
We'll take it. We'll take it every time, right?
Absolutely.
At least 1 out of 26 times. For sure. Now, do you make the mistake like me and you jump in 26 NFBC leagues, but then also pile that on top of random home leagues or other leagues on Fantrax and CBS and Yahoo and other platforms? Or are you strictly NFBC based?
I only do NFBC for draft and hold, because obviously with 26 leagues, you can't FAAB that many leagues unless you just literally are retired from, and you just, you have the
can. It's possible. Maybe not recommended.
I have 2 young daughters that would absolutely refuse to let me do anything of that nature. But I do have some Fantrax leagues, and the league that's near and dear to my heart, the one that got me into fantasy baseball in 2015, is a home league, FAAB home league, that is so cutthroat. It's not for money, but it drives people insane that are close friends, where we talk about it constantly. But
oh, sure.
Yeah, but those are the FAAB leagues I've got, are Yahoo and Fantrax. But it's a lot of fun. But the NFBC stuff, I just do draft and hold.
All right, let's get some news out of the way so that we can help people who have 26 leagues set their lineups correctly and or consider their FAAB bids if they need to spend that amount of time fabbing all those leagues, or just one league. Doesn't matter. You're going to want this information anyway. So as we tend to do, we're going to hit on a bunch of news and notes items and try to only talk about the things that are related or could be related to the guys you might be considering to FAAB, or the guys you might be considering to cut based on what's happening in the news. So all FAAB related things here. Really quick one, Kevin, I'm going to kick you off real quick. We got Wander Franco. He's back. He's back from the IL after a couple of hiccups in different rehab stints in Durham. But he returned and he's hit the ground running pretty quickly, batting second in both the games that he's played since his return so far. It's only 2 games, but have you seen any adjustments that the Rays have made that you think are going to impact the next couple of days and into the final weeks of the season as far as their infield and or lineup goes?
Yeah, and it wasn't just Wander Franco. The day before, Britton Allan came back. So it's really got 2 guys back that are going to play every day. We know that as much as Tampa will let someone play every day. It's only been 2 days with Franco, but Taylor Walls has not been in the lineup either day. He had been playing against righties. It's been righties both of the past 2 days, and he hasn't been in there. With Britton Allan, that kind of moved some guys around a little bit, and we got Harold Ramirez has been really good. We've talked about him a couple of times, and he's probably still overlooked in some leagues. He's been good. They're going to keep him in there. And over the past couple of days, what I've noticed is Christian Betancourt and Francisco Mejia, who had been in the lineup sometimes at the same time with one of them as the designated hitter. That has not been the case. It's only been 2 and 3 days between the 2 players being back, but that has not been happening. David Peralta sat a day, and G-Man Choi sat Harold Ramirez playing first base to open up the DH spot. So that's what we're going to see. We're used to that with those guys typically being Tampa. We know those guys aren't always going to play every day. The big one is Taylor Walls. I don't see a spot for him.
Yeah, I don't think he saw a spot for himself the way he had been playing most of the season anyway. If you've been holding on to him in the deepest of formats just because of position eligibility or desperation, I know I've got a couple pieces of exposure on Walls, especially in my DCs and my other draft and holds, but it's been I think I only have him in a lineup in one spot, and it's pure desperation, and I'm probably in 8th or 9th place in that league for good reason anyway. So yeah, I'm just glad to see Wander back in the lineup on a regular basis. I don't have a lot of exposure with Franco, but it's just baseball is better having him on the field. Somebody else is not back. I was considering him back because all the rumors said that Josh Young was going to break camp, and then he broke something else instead. And he was out for the good majority of the year. and he's been rehabbing ever since. Finally, the Rangers decided to call him up, and he debuted a couple days ago. Britton, what are your expectations for this kind of a call up this late in the season?
My expectations are through the roof with Josh Young. How about your first major league at bat? You just go ahead and hit a monster home run. And then during that game, too, you go ahead and steal a base.
Debut combo meal. That is a beautiful thing.
Debut combo meal. He's what? I tell you what expectations. How about I just go break those literally day one and we just not even worry about it. But here's what I know about Josh Young is that he tore his labrum in his shoulder back in February. He's been rehabbing hard, but what he really worked on was his mental game. I don't know if y'all knew this, Kevin, Adam, that his great-grandfather was a Swiss psychiatrist named Carl Jung, who pioneered dream analysis and archetype and persona. And so what Josh did is that he meditated and got his mind right. Now, I don't know if any of that's true, but what I do know is true.
Yeah, me.
But what I do know, I know. But when I have the last name, and so I figure it's probably true. It could be true, but let's not let truth get in the way of a good narrative here. But what I do know, he's a top-rated prospect for the Rangers. He's going to play third base every day. He's the only problem with his at-bats may be Josh Smith, who they also called up, but I think he's playing left field. So he's going to keep moving up the order. He's going to keep hitting home runs. His shoulder feels good because he's hitting home runs and stealing bases. And his mind is right after reading all that psychiatrist Carl Jung stuff in the offseason and the Red Book and whatever else that Swiss gentleman wrote. But yeah, I'm all in on Josh Young. I think he is like the FAAB get of the week. He's a must add just because of the power, opportunity, and speed component. He's really exciting.
Yeah, plus it does seem like there's no reason he won't play every day based on the pedigree and the fact that they even sent down to make room for him Ezekiel Duran, who had been playing some third base as well. So a lot of his competition was swept under the rug as he was coming up, which seemed like the same scenario that we were in back in February and March, as the Rangers were basically getting rid of every other third base option and not signing any third base options with the assumption that Young would be ready and compete for Rookie of the Year.
I was doing the same thing the Rangers were doing. Right. In the drafts that I did prior to his injury, I was drafting him as my starting third baseman. I'm sure you guys remember, third base was pretty thin during draft season, and they're the 4 or 5 guys that would go by the end of the third round. I was waiting and taking Young later in every draft. So in my drafting holds, this is a nice addition for me already. I already roster him in most of my DCs that I drafted before the injury. But yeah, I was in the same spot the Rangers were. Luckily in FAAB leagues, I was able to replace him. But some of my drafting holds, I've had pretty weak third basemen all season long.
It's a small little celebration in those scenarios. Bring out the party favors. All right, let's move over, Kevin, to the Yankees, who got a couple of big names put on the IL this week, including Anthony Rizzo. He was put on the IL for headaches after being treated for his back. So they specifically said this IL stint is not for his back. It's to clear up the headaches that he got from the medication and or the treatment that he was getting for his back itself, which sounds worse somehow. So hopefully he gets right there as he comes back. And then DJ LeMay, who joined him on the IL as well. So does this make any room for we talked about this last week. Does this make any room for any of the rookies that the Yankees have up now and make them more appealing, at least for this next week that those guys are going to be out?
Maybe for just a week, but they haven't been very good either. Oswaldo Cabrera has been playing right field, and I have this guy listed for later in the show, but the saving grace here is Harrison Bader starting his rehab assignment as early as tomorrow. It hasn't been officially announced that it will be tomorrow, as in today, as we record on Sunday, and you'll be listening to this on Sunday. Yeah, as early as Sunday, he's going to begin his rehab assignment, and they're saying like a week to 10 days. This is the week to grab Bader in leagues where he's available. I don't have interest in Cabrera. Stanton is back again after missing a few more days after coming back this last time, back in the DH spot. So the lineup is pretty set. Also, Miguel Andujar is back with the team, and he's played 4 of the 5 days. They have had games against nothing but right-handed pitching, and he's playing against them. He should definitely play against left-handed pitching. So I think the Yankees have decided they're done with the rookies for the most part, other than Cabrera, who they need in the outfield right now until Bader comes back.
Yeah, to be fair, the Yankees have been done with rookies all season. They didn't have an at-bat by a rookie until 3 weeks ago. For most of the season, at least up until late July, they didn't need it. And they could really use anything at this point. So apparently those aren't the answers for them at the moment. And next week will be very interesting to see the lineups that they throw out there. Like you said, Stan is back. He did homer today. Obviously, Judge is doing what he's doing. I hope his back doesn't act up after carrying everybody else along the way. But that's pretty much it. That's the gist of it in New York.
And as we talked last week, they had been just fine with Aaron Hicks in the outfield most days, but after that misplayed fly ball, he's not in the lineup today, which is not surprising.
All right, when Bader comes back, he's got quite a hill to climb to make that trade with the Jordan Montgomery trade worth it, at least in the eyes of Yankees fans. Good luck to him on that.
Yeah, and good luck to us. He had 15 stolen bases in less than a season's worth of plate appearances, so he can still be a big help there.
I will be watching.
It'll only be like 2 weeks, but he could help a lot in those 2 weeks.
I will be watching with bated breath what he does in those rehab starts. If he steals just one base, I'm going to feel a whole lot better about his chances of actually running when he gets back to the majors. All right, another IL stint here. This one a little more painful, at least in my brain. Kuiper Ruiz, he goes to the IL, catcher for the Nationals. I'm not even going to get into the details. Okay, he's on the IL. That's enough. If you want to do that to yourself and Google why, you're more than welcome to. But he's going to be out for at least the 10 days, and he should get as much rest as possible. Just leave it at that. Britton, who is filling in behind the plate in Washington, and are they worth looking into if you need to fill his spot, or are you just hoping that there's somebody else out there at the catcher position?
Let's first, you're right about Kuiper Ruiz, man. He got a double kick in the balls because he got removed from the Dodgers. So you go from the Dodgers to the Nationals, you got traded, and then you get injured just when you're hitting your stride and having a good season. But I looked at the Nationals lineup or the roster. They have 3 catchers. This is how a team is in full blow, like rebuilding mode. They have 3 catchers that they're carrying on their roster. And it's Riley Adams, Trey Barrera, and they just called up Israel Pineda, who's their top catcher prospect. And I looked at him, and he has started the year in high A ball, played well, earned a promotion, has moved up AA, AAA, and now they're letting him get a taste of the good life for a September call-up. What's better than letting one of your best prospects come up for a taste of the major leagues? They're like, hey, Pineda, no more days in for you on the road out there. We're staying at the Hilton Exley over there. You want room service? Enjoy yourself. All you have to do is have a good time in September and have a really good spring training, and this can be your life. Wink, wink. All you have to do is play well. But unfortunately, none of those guys are like Pineda is kind of like a long-term guy. But I would say as of right now, today, FAAB, pick up somebody. Go look and see if Gabriel Moreno is out there. So Toronto's got Danny Jansen. They tried to sneak Zach Collins through the waivers. Tricky Blue Jays. He's DFA'd because he's out of options. They're going to sneak him through. But here's the problem with doing that. Because I don't know if y'all noticed, but the Pittsburgh Pirates don't really engage in free agency. What they do engage is in having some dude or some lady looking at the DFA waivers. That's their free agency. There's like a corporate strategy.
Job.
There's
just
like a corporate.
Every day, just check it.
They don't sign free agents. They pick up people off the DFA's out of option waiver wire. If you go to the Pittsburgh Pirates corporate strategy handbook and go, okay, free agent acquisitions, you open up, it's like chapter 6. You open it and you're like, okay, there's one sentence for our strategy. It says, see DFA waiver wire mid-season. You're like, how is that a free agent? But that's what it is. But anyway, so long story short, so Zach Collins got claimed by the Pirates. So the Blue Jays, they're in contention, man. So they called up Moreno, who in 18 games this year hasn't lit the world on fire. He's a rookie, but let's look at it like this. He's their number one prospect in MLB pipeline. He's top 10 prospect out of all prospect. This guy has all the potential in the world. And so he's sitting out there in several leagues. He's going to be a backup. Danny Jansen has a tendency to get hurt and get cold. So you never know when Moreno can just unleash. And at this late stage in the game, that's what we're looking for, somebody that's got the potential and like an avenue to playing time. And that's what Gabriel Moreno has. So if he's out there and you're looking at, you've got maybe a spot for a backup catcher, I think he's the guy.
Nice. I'd be interested to see how much playing time he gets now that he's got called back up in Toronto, with them obviously fighting for, I don't know, even the East at this point, but at least holding on to a wild card spot. Kevin, let's go to the Dodgers, who are not fighting for anything. They have everything pretty much locked up, and so they can take these kind of moves in stride. Max Muncy received a cortisone shot in his knee after Wednesday's game, and then he proceeded to sit out Friday and Saturday, even after getting the off day on Thursday. With Muncy, are you expecting more of these sporadic missed days, or anyone else for that matter, on the Dodgers? And does it have an impact on who you're holding and targeting each week moving forward?
Yeah, they have this luxury, and it's not good for us as fantasy players. Even their superstars that are healthy probably going to get some rest days. It makes it tough. It makes it so when we're looking at a schedule, typically we look at 5-game weeks as, ooh, maybe if this guy's not an elite superstar, maybe I should use somebody else. With the Dodgers, I think that way in a 6-game week, because these guys probably aren't playing every single day. Now, a lot of them have the last week. I shouldn't say a lot of them. 3 of them have. Justin Turner played most days. He played all but one, but only the top 3 in their lineup, Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, and Freddie Freeman, played every day this week. And so this is going to happen with the entire lineup. We know that's the way they work, and they do this when they are in a tight race, let alone now when they have this wrapped up. So yeah, absolutely. And as far as Max Muncy specifically is concerned, this hurts a lot, right? For those of us that held on to him or picked him up where people didn't hold on to him, and now over the past 3 or 4 weeks, he's been what we expected him to be all season. And now it's going to be tough to put him in lineups this week until we see him in a lineup. If I see him in there, I'll go ahead and use him, knowing he's probably going to get a couple days off. He does DH quite often anyway. That helps, but I'm going to have to see him in a lineup before I could use him anymore as well.
Yeah, I venture to guess, like you said, that the Dodgers are going to do this with plenty of players. I do wonder how much goes into their brains as far as like Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, who are still in a race for National League MVP, right? They're still neck and neck with Paul Goldschmidt and others. And whether or not they just won't take them out because they want them with every opportunity to get their counting stats up, pad their stats, and get them into an opportunity to place. And it's not the same as in Atlanta, where they have 2 Rookie of the Year candidates, and the team themselves can actually benefit if at least Michael Harris wins or places. Actually, if anything, the Dodgers might lose out if one of these guys, at least monetarily, because I'm sure there's a clause in their contract that says if they place or win any certain awards that they get a nice little bump in pay. But I wonder how that plays in the decision-making process, especially somebody like Betts, who has a history of some back issues, may want, even though he has showing no signs right now, still giving him a couple of rest days wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, so that he's 110% for playoffs. All right, let's get over to, I'm going to give the Royals question to Britton and give Kevin a rest on that one. The Royals got Vinny Pasquantino back from the IL, and it also appears Edward Olivares should return in short order after completing more than a few rehab games as of recent. So, Britton, what sort of impact do you see the Kansas City lineup with these 2 back in the fold?
I see a huge lineup, not only for Kansas City Royal fans, but for Kevin Hasting specifically, because When Vinny P went on the IL, I don't know if you know this, Adam. I hope I'm not outing Kevin here too bad, but Kevin locked himself in a cold, dark cell. It had no windows. And he locked himself in there until Vinny P got back off the IL. And then, much like Andy Dufresne from the Shawshank Redemption, came out of the room with Vinny P free at last. And Vinny P, of course, comes back and is sliding right back into the cleanup spot, hitting a double, taking a walk. And Vinny P's underlying metrics are the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. He is going to be the impact bat for the Kansas City Royals from here on out, barring injury. Edward Olivares, don't know so much about him. I was thinking that Drew Waters may be somebody to watch, or Kyle Isbell on the Kansas City Royals. The main impact is Vinny P, and I'm so happy that Kevin has been freed from his solitary confinement with Vinny P back, because, hey, if you're a Kansas City Royal fan, I know Vinny P is the bee's knees.
Kevin, it's good to have you back. I didn't notice a change, awesome, but I am glad to hear it. Kevin, you've been watching games even without Vinny P in the lineup, but like now that he is back, is he knocking anybody out? I completely agree with you, Britton. Like, this is an impact bat. Get him back in your lineup. Hopefully you didn't drop him and you stashed him while you could. Who is he knocking out of that Royals lineup? And is Olivares going to do the same thing, or is he going to just take a bench role when he comes back?
I think Olivares will take a bench role. They have several outfielders, including Michael A. Taylor, and then a bunch of young guys, and he'll get some playing time. The Vinny Pasquantino is going to play every day, and the guy that's going to take the biggest hit is Nick Pratto. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, if you ask me or any Royals fan, but rather than have Ryan O'Hearn sit even more often or sit Hunter Dozier, they're going to sit Nick Pratto. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's what they've shown. They've done it already. Pasquantino's been back for a day. Pratto already sat a game. Yeah, it's tough. We're going to see Ryan O'Hearn and Hunter Dozier instead of Nick Pratto in the lineup, especially against lefties.
All right, so make those notes if you are still rostering Pratto or any of those other guys, what you should be expecting moving forward, at least for the remainder of the season. We'll see what the Royals do in the offseason as far as 2023 opening day goes. Somebody else who's trying to make their way back, Kevin, Mike Soroka, who he's technically already activated from the IL back in early September, but he got sent down to the minors, basically rehab stint while he's not actually on the IL. He went 4 innings in another minor league start just the other day. Is there any reason that you'd be trying to take a chance on Soroka as a flyer in the case he returns back to Atlanta before the end of this current season, never mind looking at 2023?
I don't think so. Not until I hear he's going to be back and they have him a targeted start date. And even then, I don't know. Most of his numbers during this rehab assignment are pretty good, other than the ERA. He's been giving up runs, but the whip is still decent. The strikeouts are there, but and he's only went 4 innings. And I guess he went 4 2/3 back in August, but then he's back to only 4 innings pitched in his last 2 starts. So I don't think he's definitely not worth a stash for me, like we've been talking for 3 or 4 weeks now. But if he were to have a targeted start, he's probably not going to go 5 innings his first time out, at least. And we're at the end of the season here. I just don't see him being of value this season, unfortunately. Coming back from the same injury multiple times, all the hope in the world for him in 2023. And if we don't see him, maybe we get more affordable price going into next season. That'll be interesting to see how that works out, especially what we hear about his health throughout the off season. But yeah, I just don't see there being much he can do for us in the last 3.5 weeks.
Yeah, that is too bad. The only scenario I see him being even questionably useful is in like a head-to-head league where your league goes all the way to the final week of the season. Your championship is in the week of the season. If you're able to stash him now and plug him into your lineup for that, into your rotation for that final week as like a streamer, maybe you have to be in a very specific situation to take that kind of risk. But there's a name to keep an eye out in possibly keeper leagues right now if you can still stash them and look toward the future.
That is an interesting point. I'm in a keeper league where you're not allowed to pick someone up who's on the IL. Officially, he's now off the IL. So you can make a move like that. That's a great point.
All right. Britton, we have, he hasn't gotten the IL, but Victor Robles of the Nationals, he's missed the last 3 games with neck stiffness. He's been out since, I believe, since Thursday, and he missed again today, Saturday, as we're recording this. And though, again, he hasn't been put on the IL, he also hasn't been playing every day anyway. So if he just missed 3 days in a row, it wouldn't have been he wouldn't have been bad at an eye. But it was officially announced he wasn't even an option for these games because of the neck stiffness. Is there, because of his sure absence, does it provide any extra playing time for others? And do you see anybody taking advantage of that?
Yeah, Victor Robles, your neck gets stiff when you're striking out so much. It hurts. It's called whiplash. I hope he's okay in all seriousness. But this has opened up a opportunity for one of the hottest hitters in baseball. Yes, I'm actually serious. It's an outfielder named Alex Call for the Nationals. In his last 9 at-bats, he's got 7 hits. 7 out of 9 sounds pretty good. 2 home runs, 9 RBIs. Replacing the injured Richard Robles. I know that's ridiculous, right? I mean, talk about just some crazy fluke. I get it. But look, they're not going to rush Victor Robles back from any type of injury. It's not like he was killing it anyway. So why not give Alex Call a look for the Nationals? They're obviously in rebuilding mode. We heard about Kyber Ruiz. I won't bring that up again. But yeah, Alex Call is an interesting name to take a look at. And they have several other members, too, on the Nationals. The big get from the Padres in the Soto trade was C.J. Abrams. And C.J. Abrams is fascinating because he's started out slow and he's young, but he was such a hot prospect. And now that he's been called up as the everyday shortstop for the Nationals, he's been batting. He's been .360. He's been getting on base. His key is stolen bases. He's a super fast guy. With Victor Robles out, there are several interesting players to look at. My favorite being Alex, a.k.a. Last Call. I don't know if y'all ever heard that. Yeah, I don't know if y'all ever heard this last call for alcohol. I've heard that maybe at the bar at 3 a.m. they say, look, you don't have to quit drinking, but you can't drink here anymore. I may have heard that once or twice in my college days. But anyway, so give Alex Last Call a look because, hey, he's super hot and there are 4 FAAB periods left. Why not try to find somebody that's super hot and just put them on your bench spot and see what happens?
There we go. Exactly. All right. Well, let's stay in the NL East, Kevin, and we'll go back down to Atlanta, who should be getting back their everyday second baseman, Ozzie Albies. He's looking to return soon after finishing a bunch of rehab stints as well in AAA. What kind of adjustments are you foreseeing Atlanta making once he does return? Does Albies play every day after coming off of this kind of an injury? Where does Von Vroosham go? There are a lot of questions here.
There's a lot of questions that we're not going to know the answers to until we see what happens. And this is frustrating. Like we talked last week about, fantasy baseball is fun. This is one of those really frustrating things that if we guess wrong is going to make it not so much fun. Now, I was wrong when Vaughn Grissom first came up. I thought Albies would be back a little sooner than it is ended up being. And I thought he would be the one to lose out on playing time. Back then, we still had minor league seasons going. I thought he'd get sent right back down, quite possibly.
I did the exact same thing.
Yeah, but he has performed so well, that's difficult to fathom. And the minor league seasons are over. He's not going anywhere. But it's hard to fathom him losing out on playing time. Now, he's been working out in left field, And Marcell Ozuna, in spite of his off-the-field issues, has been playing left field nearly every day. As Eddie Rosario and Robbie Grossman in a pretty strict platoon going there in right field. It really looks like, if I had to guess, I think most days Vaughn Grissom is the new left fielder and Ozzie Albies is playing second base. And this could all be different if Ronald Acuna Jr. was healthy enough to not be taking up the DH spot. The biggest frustration for me is William Contreras has only played one day this week because Ronald Acuna Jr. is in the DH spot and Travis d'Arnaud is at caught every game but one. So this is a frustrating situation in Atlanta because, like, quite frankly, they have more players that could be fantasy, not just relevant, but really help our fantasy teams than they have room for. And to this bringing Albies back is just another thing that throws another wrench here. And Dansby Swanson, typically when either Acuna Jr. or Albies has missed time in the past, Dansby Swanson has moved up in the lineup from his 6 or 7 spot. How do you move him out of that 2 spot with how he's performed this year? So I don't even know what they're going to do with the lineup. I would guess that Albies starts out lower in the lineup since he has missed so much time and needs to work his way back up. But they could put him right back at the top, and then we're losing plate appearances from Dansby Swanson, who's having a great year. This is, like I said, we're not going to know till we see it.
Yeah, I think the only to call back to something I said earlier with the Dodgers. I think the only one safe is Michael Harris, who, again, the Atlanta wants him to win Rookie of the Year, so they get that draft pick. So they're going to want him to pad his bench stats. Not that besides teammate Spencer Strider, anybody's really competing in the National League for that against him. But I would venture to guess he might get a routine day rest, but it's not going to be like any kind of a platoon situation.
He might even move up another spot in the lineup. He's up to he was 9. Now he's been 6 or 7, alternating back and forth. I could see him putting him above d'Arnaud too, just to get him a couple extra plate appearances for that reason.
I would appreciate that. Thank you, Kevin. All right, let's go over to St. Louis. We got another call up, Britton. They placed Dylan Carlson on the IL, and they replaced him with prospect Alec Burleson, who has been playing the outfield since. Are you interested in any of the Cardinals' devil magic coming across with this new outfielder? They tend to do that, especially with both their own prospects and those who they bring in from outside the organization.
Aren't the Cardinals amazing? The whole National League this year has just taken over. You've got the Dodgers number 1. You've got Atlanta number 2. And as Kevin was just saying, Atlanta's got so many good players. They don't know where to put them all. And they're coming. Ozzie Albies is coming back. So, yeah, the National League is stacked. And, of course, St. Louis is stacked too. And they, with Dylan Carlson on the IL, they called up Alec Burleson, who is a masher, kind of a Vinny P. Kevin, don't get too excited, but a Vinny P type batter, lefty bat, big power. He crushed International League. He crushed minor league pitching, including one of my cities I used to live in, Memphis, Tennessee, at the AAA Park. Shout out Memphis, Tennessee, at the AAA AutoZone Park, where they serve in the stands for your pleasure. And I think Kevin and I talked about this too one time. Barbecue nachos from the Rendezvous. You can get those if you go visit AAA in Memphis, Tennessee. But so Alec Burleson, I digress. Barbecue, sorry. I got all excited there. Anyway, Alec Burleson, he's a power bat. He's a great hitter. He is a free swinger. So he's one of those guys you keep an eye on because, of course, the Cardinals, much like the Dodgers and the Braves, they're stacked in the outfield too. They have Lars Nootbaar, Corey Dickerson, who is a former Gold Glove out in left field, and Tyler O'Neill has been hitting it too. But it kind of looks like Burleson will DH against righties. Of course, we all know Albert Pujols is also in the mix for DHing. But yeah, I'm excited about Alec Burleson because he can hit, and he's one of those players that you keep an eye on. You can get him for literally like $1 or $2 FAAB, and he can take off in a New York minute, give you like a Adam Duvall type power surge back from last year. But yeah, in any power hitter from the Cardinals, I'm definitely interested in.
It seems as though, again, it's all going to come down to playing time. And if he can force his way into that lineup on a regular basis, due to the power source that you're talking about, he would be at the very least a nice stash for this week and get him in the lineup for the final 3 weeks. Cardinals also, they have a decent little cushion, or they're going to win their division most likely. They could give an opportunity to him down the stretch and give some guys some extra rest as well. All right, Kevin, the last note here I got is that just today the Mets put Starling Marte on the IL, and they are set to call up Matt Vientos to replace him on the roster. What kind of expectations do you have for this call up as you see the Mets swapping out the veteran Marte for Vientos?
Yeah, this is tough. I don't know that he's going to get a lot of playing time either. And until I see it and see him in the lineup, I'm just not going to count on it. They want Tyler Naquin in the lineup versus righties. They want Daniel Vogelbach in the lineup versus righties. They face 7 right-handed starting pitchers this coming week as things stand right now. So even if we see Vientos in the lineup tomorrow when they're set to face a lefty, or Sunday, I should say, to avoid any confusion, we're just not going to know for a while. And I don't have room on my rosters for a wait and see right now. I would guess most of his playing time comes against lefties. And then in that case, I'm not going to want him on my roster anyway, especially in a week where they're facing 7 right-handed starting pitchers. Yeah, I don't see him getting a lot of playing time, at least right off the bat.
That's fair. And obviously you got to look at that schedule moving forward. And as you mentioned, who they're facing. Obviously he could come in as a pinch hitter later on in the game or what have you, but that's doing next to nothing for you unless you are, again, in the most desperate of situations. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for our news and notes section of this episode. As always, I'm sure we missed a whole bunch of stuff worth noting. Keep up with all the news of the day. Make sure you're listening to the First Pitch podcast with Chad Young, Scott Chu, and Daniel Port. They break down the news, highlights, and observations from every day's worth of games, as well as looking ahead at each slate to keep you up to date with everything you need to know to win your fantasy league. In just a moment, we're going to talk to Britton about some other news that did come through just on Friday. This is the section where we will talk about news that doesn't necessarily have to do with FAAB. I'll leave it at that. But before we do that, we will take this quick break.
Hey, Alex Fast here, and thanks for listening to this podcast on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. If you're a fan, consider supporting all of us by getting a PL Plus subscription, where you're going to get an ad-free website and get access to our Discord, where you can talk to all of our podcast hosts and staff. Plus, you can hang out with our incredible Pitcher List community. It's basically a baseball sanctuary year-round for as low as $8 a month. You can sign up at pitcherlist.com/plus, and you're going to get your first month free with promo code podcast. Also, don't forget to check out everything else we do as well, from YouTube videos, live streams, newsletters, off-season articles, TikToks, breakdowns, over 15 baseball podcasts on our network. We can't stop talking about baseball even during the off-season. So sign up for PL Plus today at pitcherlist.com/plus and use promo code podcast to get your first month free. All right. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show.
All right, guys, we are back. Of course, you are listening to On the Wire. I am Adam Howe, joined every week with Kevin Hasting, and our guest this week, Britton Allan, is joining us. We're going to talk about some news that we don't normally talk about on this podcast, because it doesn't really affect your FAAB bidding for this weekend or the rest of the year. And of course, it's the big rule that everybody's going to be talking about. So I want to make sure we got some thoughts in here early on, and it'll be a constant barrage of information on Twitter and in articles and on podcasts. But of course, Major League Baseball did vote to change a couple rules going into the 2023 season. There'll be addition of a pitch clock, and from my understanding, it'll be a 20-second pitch clock when there is a runner on base. Otherwise, it'll be a 15-second pitch clock when the bases are empty. They are going to ban the shift, which, from my understanding, that means that all the 4 infielders, 2 infielders have to be to the left and right of second base, and both feet have to be on the dirt. Some interesting note that I did read was that it doesn't stop an outfielder for coming into the infield to start a play as well. So it just means that the 4 infielders have to be on opposite side of second base. And then they are going to, I don't have the number exactly, but they are going to increase the size of the bases on the base paths for second and third. So with that in mind, Britton, I'm going to let you get your thoughts out here first. I just want you guys to talk about, are these things going to affect, if you were to do a draft tomorrow, which there's already been at least one DC draft happening. If you were to do a draft tomorrow, is this rule alone, these things, this announcement alone, going to affect how you are drafting and get into as much granularity or generality as you like?
Can you imagine 3 more historical or impactful rule changes in the history of baseball, other than maybe the integration of
removing the mound, or
so you're instituting a pitch clock that's going to be vigorously enforced, stepping on, stepping off, pick-off attempts, things like that. So those are going to change how pitchers approach every single batter and every single runner. Then the shift, which is going to impact every single left-handed batter and every other batter too. And then the bases that are changing. And when you look at it, like, oh, what's a couple more inches here or there? But as if you would ask any lady out there, every bigger is better. And it's going to 100% change how people run bases, steal bases, and more activity on base running. Literally, it's going to change the game so much. I don't think you can even really try to evaluate or even try to consider it unless you have some data to look at. And the only thing that you can look at is what's happened in the minor leagues. But then, of course, you're talking about minor league players, not big league hitters, not big league pitchers. But that's what we've got. And the thing that changed the most was the game time was cut significantly, and stolen bases were up 20%. But of course, in the minor league, stolen bases are also up no matter what. But yeah, it's shocking that these changes came through. And it's not speaking from a FAAB or anything like that. Think about how much the game has changed. And a lot of this came from COVID, I think, because that changed the DH, that pushed all the shortened season and all those issues. Like, it pushed things to the forefront of things are changing in our world. And here are some very mental steps to change the game of baseball, where, 90% of the people that love and follow a baseball are set in one way and don't necessarily maybe are open to change. But these are like so progressive steps to move the game forward. It's phenomenal. And it started with the shortened COVID, the season in 2020, and then bringing in the DH. And then I was all for the DH. I don't want pitchers hit and all that kind of stuff. Not super interested in that. But move things forward. And this is like the next step to get the game faster, get more base runners, get more activity. And that's a really long-winded answer to your question. But yeah, it's going to change everything, is in long story short.
The very generalities that I'm seeing is obviously, like you mentioned, stolen bases are up 20% in the minor leagues, almost exclusively due to the pitch clock and the amount of pitch outs that they're allowed to have. The other part of the rule with that is that pitchers will only be allowed 2 pitch outs during an at bat.
Right.
They are still allowed to throw over a third time, but if the runner is called safe from that pitch out, then they get a balk and the runner gets to advance. But if they're called out, it's out. It is what it is. So they can throw over a third time.
Sure.
But Tucker Davidson, if you go back and look at his Twitter earlier in the season, when he was with the Braves in their minor league system earlier on in 2022, he went into detail about, it's a long, really good thread. You should read it, and just his experience with the pitch clock and how difficult it is to hold runners based on not only the time clicking down, but also the amount of pitch outs that you're allowed to give. Kevin, what I'm going to ask you about specifically is, which one of, at least the first 2, the bigger basis thing, I think that's going to have a small impact, but that's going to be the hardest thing to measure, I think, until we, like Britton said, we have more data. Assuming that the pitch clock does increase the number of stolen bases in the major league level next year, whether it's really fast guys taking full advantage and hitting 60, 70 stolen bases rather than 30 to 40 stolen bases, or making an average runner just more aggressive on the base pass because they have a stronger opportunity, and spreading out the stolen bases. I think those are the 2 things that we need to keep in mind. or the shift ban that is going to obviously affect ground ball hitters who get shifted on. It may not affect fly ball pitchers. I think I saw a tweet from Rob Silver earlier in the week, or like a day or two ago, specifically talking about Joey Gallo, how unless he starts hitting the ball on the ground more often, the shift ban is not really going to affect him as much as I think as other people think. With that in mind, which one of these things are you going to be thinking about more as you are making your draft lists for 2023?
Pitch clock exclusively. The shift ban is negligible to me at best. I remember 4 or 5 years ago when we first started talking about the shift, as more teams started to do it more often. I was reading at the time, we just remember things that happen that we're not used to seeing, or things that we don't think are normal. It just doesn't happen that often. At the time, I remember thinking that it affected like 1 to 2 hits per week per team. That's not a lot, especially if we start talking per player for our purposes in this game that we play. So I don't care about the shift ban at all. Even the most extreme guys that it may actually have a little bit of effect on, it's not enough for me to worry about with everything else we have to worry about. Now, the pitch clock, there are so many things. Eno Saris has already talked about. This means lower velocity for pitchers with less rest between pitchers, and shorter outings because of less rest between pitches. I know, just looking at the Kansas City Royals, only one pitcher on their roster averages less than 20 seconds per pitch between pitches right now. That's Brady Singer, and he averages 19.5, which is 4.5 seconds more than he's going to be allowed to do if nobody's on base. Right? This is huge. Velocity down for everybody, and shorter outings for starting pitchers, and maybe even shorter outings for relievers that are used to going multiple innings at max effort, right? This is huge. And stolen bases, some of the stuff that you've talked about all season long, Adam, I'm going to be hitting you up all off season for this information. That it's not going to affect the guys that take their opportunities. This isn't going to add stolen base opportunities. So the guys that take their opportunities, it's not going to affect. I don't think we're going to have the 80 stolen base guy that some people have been tweeting about. I think a guy like Nate Lowe, who last year had 8 stolen bases, and it was the talk in all the offseason and I think it was Zach Waxman that pointed out to us, it was a specific opportunity in each case. But a guy like that has the ability to do it when he does have the opportunity. He's only got 2 stolen bases this season. I think that goes back up, maybe even double digits for a guy like that. Those are the guys that I'm going to be really interested in. The guys that can steal bases given the right opportunity, but they're not always turned loose. They're going to be turned loose more often. The guys that were used to stealing a lot of bases are probably already taking most of the opportunities they have as is. So it is pitch clock far and away, probably more, in my opinion, than most people think. And the shift ban far less than most people think, almost negligible in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it'll be more, even less so on a player by player basis and more on a team by team basis as far as who takes advantage of the pitch clock when we're talking about stolen bases. The teams that are already running aggressively will take more control over this situation. They'll take advantage of this situation. And obviously they've got every team has a whole team of people behind the scenes that are looking into whether or not it'll be worth it to do so. Obviously, stolen bases have been going down here,
and part of that will be as simple as looking at what their minor league teams are doing.
Sure.
The developmental coaches are going to say, hey, these guys are used to doing this already. That we've been teaching this for 2 seasons now. Right. And some teams probably, even though it's up to some minor leagues, they're up 30%. Britton said the 20% overall. Some specific leagues, it's been as high as 30% increase in stolen bases. I wonder if every single team has taken advantage. And if there's some that haven't, that's probably an organizational decision. And I'm going to take that into consideration next year as well.
So last question for both of you, and Britton, I'll start with you. Again, we're going to hammer this stolen base opportunity thing here, but do you think that this will stop pushing up stolen bases in at least NFBC drafts, where we see if you don't steal If you're not stealing more than 20 bases, you're not being considered in the first 2 rounds, et cetera, assuming that the stolen bases are going to get spread out to more players? Or do you think you'd rather be pushing up the guy that could take advantage of jumping up from the Bobby Witts, jumping up from 30 to 40 to 50 stolen bases? Do you think that's going to have an impact in ADP?
Yes, I do. And I think Kevin made such a great point. It's not obviously your speed guys like CJ Abrams, like they're going to steal no matter what the base size is. It's the guys like Nate Lowe, like first baseman, third baseman. Like one of the reasons why, Paul Goldschmidt was so great in all those years, because he was like one of the only first basemen that stole a bunch of bases. And couldn't it also push up catchers too, like JT Realmuto? Like he's a catcher that steals 20 bases. And players these days, they know what WAR is. They know when they go to arbitration, if you're a catcher and you hit 20 home runs, you get X amount of money because your WAR equals this. If you're a catcher and you hit 20 home runs and you have 15 stolen bases, your WAR goes up, and your representatives, your agent, your wife, they're all telling you, hey, get your WAR up because that means more money. Arbiters, those people at all these arbitration hearings, like, they don't look at games. Those people have never watched a baseball game in their life. They look at WAR and all the numbers and say, if you have X WAR, you get X amount of money. And baseball players today aren't from 5, even 10, 20 years ago. They know all this stuff. And if you steal bases, it increases your WAR, whether that's right, wrong, or the other. But that's just a mathematical fact. So yeah, I think it's going to increase it, because Mike Trout back in the day, before he got his big contract, he was stealing bases. He doesn't do that much anymore. And I don't think it's out of left field, pun intended, or center field, I guess, that Aaron Judge just happened to have the highest stolen bases of his career this year, because that WAR daddy number is going to go way up on top of the home runs. But I think it's player driven. And it's going to be money driven, because if you're a player and you steal bases, your WAR is higher. It's really that simple.
Kevin, are you spreading out your stolen bases in ADP, or you think you're going to push those up? Do you think the field is going to push them up even more so because of this?
I think the field will push them up. I'm not certain yet. Like I said, I'm going to hitting you up for some of this info in the off season, and it doesn't matter in many cases. In so many cases, I'm going to be looking at what guys like Todd Zola is going to crunch numbers and tell us what we should do. I'm going to do some of that myself based on, I know you already have a lot of this research done. I'm going to be hitting you up. Others are going to do the same. But I think in general, the guys that we already know steal bases are going to get pushed up even further than we're used to. And my hope is the numbers tell us that's not what we should do, because that's when we can take advantage. And my inclination is I think that could be the case. I think it's going to be guys that we don't think of as stolen base guys that are going to reap the benefit of this. And so then that's a huge advantage if most people are pushing the traditional stolen base guys up.
Especially if you're doing one of these very early drafts in October or November, before a lot of the high-end research has been published, or at least even teased or announced. ADP is going to change.
I'm waiting for your article at Pitcher List on this, Adam. I want it.
Appreciate the pressure.
I want it before the end of the League Championship Series. I want this done. I want to be able to read this.
All right, I'm gonna tune out here. You guys finish the episode. I'm gonna go work on this together. All right, guys, we'll see where all that ends up in the weeks and months ahead. But for now, let's put our eyes directly on this coming week, and let's give the listeners some names that they can consider for their FAAB pickups this Sunday evening. And we are going to stick with our normal order of operations here. But first, we had a quick question from @TriplePlayFantasy. And I want to get your guys' take. Like, we got 4 weeks left. The question is, how much money do you guys have to even work with when we're going after these players that we're recommending in your typical 12-teamer and or 15-teamer, if there's a major difference? Now, I know, Britton, you said that your 26 leagues on NFBC are all draft and holds, but you got a couple FAABs elsewhere. as well. But Kevin, I know you've got more than a handful of FAAB leagues as well. I'm working with, I think I talked about this last week, in my 12 teamers, mostly in our listener leagues. I only got a little bit less this week since I spent like over $100 last week on pretty much anybody I wanted. I'm still in a like $300 to $400 range for the last 3 weeks. So I'll be probably spending a good $100 a week going through my roster with a fine tooth comb. My 15 teamers, a lot less. And this happens to me every year, honestly. Like I always have way less money in my 15 teamers. I'm making a lot more moves in those 15 teamers on top of the fact that my 12 teamers, I also know I don't have to spend as much money throughout the course of the year on any given week to pick up the guys I want. And I always have conditional bids, even in 12 teamers. So I can save that kind of money unless a big name does pop up and I really want them. But how are you guys, Kevin? How are you looking in your various leagues?
As we talked last week, I was down to $2 in one. That is now $0. So I range from $0 to about $100. However, in most leagues, I have about 30 or 40 bucks left, which is about what I plan on at the beginning of the season. I plan on spreading it out throughout the season, and anybody listening that's listened before knows that we're pretty conservative with our bids, both of us here. But it's at the last month of the season, I'm not counting on there being any big names or anybody that is really going to have a huge effect. We talked about Josh Young earlier in the show. Britton's 100% correct. He's a must add in every league. He'll be on all of my bid lists, but I probably won't get him in many. And at this point in the year, it's not just because I am by choice bidding low. It's out of necessity. I'm saving $3 or $4 for that final half week of the season, $5 or $6 for the last full week before. That means I have $10 to $15 for these next 2 weeks to spend. If I really think someone can really help my team, if I really think they can contribute to a category that can gain me multiple points, I can possibly see blowing most of what I have left at this point, and then just hoping that no injuries, because we're at the point where saving it might not do me any good. We're at that point. We have to do things we wouldn't do earlier in the season if we want to give ourselves a chance, and we're not going to have that chance if we just play it by the book that we have written for ourselves for the year. I'm about where I expect it to be in most leagues, some quite a bit less, some a little more, but yeah, typically I have $30 or $40 left in $1,000 FAAB leagues.
Would you find yourself in a situation now that you expect yourself to be in? As Kevin mentioned, do you budget in that way, or have things come up?
Things have completely gone off the rails in the 15 teamers. I'm over aggressive. Like a 115 team league I'm in, I bet I spent all my FAAB on Michael Harris. Like if I see that one player that I just absolutely have to have, I go for it. The 12 teamers are different. I've still got half my money, and I think I'm under aggressive in the 12 teamers, even though here we are with only 4 FAAB periods left. But yeah, there's just something about it. And those 15 teamers, I feel like it's now or never. So I go, I go crazy.
All right, then let's get some players. That's why the people are here listening. They want to know who they should be considering. And especially this time of year, though, everybody listening, just keep in mind, every roster is different. This is why we break it down by category. You may not need any speed. You might have 25 stolen bases more than the next lowest person. You don't really care. You're probably skipping ahead the next 5 or 10 minutes into the next category. You know what? That's okay. But we're going to go through each category anyway. We'll start with our power category, guys. Kevin, we'll start here with you. Who might be hitting a couple bombs this coming week that you're going to want on your teams if you need that power?
Yeah, shallower leagues, AJ Pollock is pretty widely available. He is 100% rostered in the 15-team main events, 90% in the 12-team online championships, but only 27% on Yahoo. I know that's 3 outfielders typically, smaller rosters, but I think 10-team leagues. But when he's healthy, he's a top 30 outfielder. So he's healthy right now. Things are going well. Also, the White Sox are set to face 3 left-handed starters this week in their 6 games. And on the season, he's hitting .294 with 10 of his 11 home runs on the season versus lefties. So where he's available, I like AJ Pollock. Deeper leagues, Kerry Carpenter still available in over half of 15 team leagues and everywhere else. He's only 2% rostered in the online championship, 1% on Yahoo. He had 30 home runs in only 400 plate appearances, AA and AAA this season, before coming up to the Tigers. And in spite of the Tigers lineup, I talked a little bit the last couple of weeks about it's hard to use guys in the lineups like this at this point in the season because of our other counting stats. We're counting on the entire lineup to produce for us so that we can get runs, so that we can get RBIs. But he's hitting enough home runs and getting on base often enough that he's scoring multiple runs each scoring period since he's come up. And he doesn't play every day. He's a platoon guy. Fortunately, he's the strong side of the platoon, and hopefully there might be less of that down the stretch. The Tigers aren't going anywhere. Maybe they see what he can do against everybody, and that would be an added bonus. But he's hitting home runs and driving people in and scoring runs. He's actually scoring runs at a higher rate than driving them in, which has been great for his stat lines. And he's doing it while hitting .270. This has been 19 games now, 70 plate appearances, and he's still hitting .270 at the major league level, only striking out 24% of the time. That's not amazing, but for a guy with his power, slugging .508, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, myself included, just stop looking at the Tigers as an option. And yeah, these names go to the wayside. They go unnoticed. You got to look through the entire league. So I appreciate that call out for sure. Who might you be looking at if you need some power this week?
I love Cal Raleigh from the Seattle Mariners. He's their everyday catcher. And of course, he's well known. He's going to be rostered in all your main event leagues. But if you're like me and you're playing in Yahoo and Fantrax leagues, he's only 50% rostered. And he had a 1.430 OPS and 5 home runs last week. He has hit a power surge. And I just love that whole vibe from the Seattle team. Like I'm from Nashville. I've never been to Seattle, but I feel like that is an exciting team to watch. Julio Rodriguez, Ty France is hitting well. It's just a great vibe up there. And Cal Raleigh too is a young guy, starting catcher. And man, he is on a hot streak, 5 home runs. It's so great. So if you're in a league like me, like Fantrax or something like that, he is definitely somebody to go look at as for a power source out of your catcher position, which is great.
Yeah, especially in those leagues where you only have the one catchers, he's still very much available and very much useful. Probably more useful than who you have going on.
Oh yeah, with a hot team too. That I love it. It's so good to be on a team that's feeling that mojo, feeling that surge, especially because Seattle's trying to make their first postseason appearance in like 3 decades. Sure. Yeah, I don't even know, but I love trying to find those players that are just riding the wave with the Julio Rodriguez of the world, and this is one of those guys.
There you go. All right, let's get out of the power category into our speed category. If you're looking for the stolen bases, if you still need some runs, Kevin, who might you be looking at this week?
Like I said last week, the pressure's on, Adam, because we're on a pretty good run on these call-outs over the past 5-6 weeks now. This is going pretty good. And I got a couple of guys this week, but they're not guys that are going to help anywhere else. Andrew Velasquez has started running again. He had went a couple of weeks there without any attempts. He can't hit. He's hit to your batting average. If that's a concern, you don't need him. He's not going to provide anything else. But if you need stolen bases, he's back at it. In fact, he had another one on Saturday. So he's up to 16 on the season now. and he's somebody that is widely available because he's not good at anything else. The other guy doesn't even
He's
play.
not good at his job.
The other guy doesn't even play except to steal bases. Terrence Gore has 3 World Series rings and might get a 4th since he's been added to the Mets roster in time to be on the postseason roster. That teams have done this before. Added him right at the last possible second, put him on the roster so he's eligible for the postseason to do nothing but pinch run. And it's already worked. He did not have a plate appearance in the game for the Mets that he stole a base. So the advantage there is you're still not getting anything else, but he's not going to hurt your batting average at all. He did get 1 plate appearance in another game for the Mets. I believe he still has more stolen bases than plate appearances for his career by quite a bit. So there's no guarantee he's going to get in a game. The Mets have a 7-game week. I feel pretty confident we see at least 1 stolen base out of Terrence Gore this week.
Like we always say, you get 1 stolen base out of somebody, that's a 26 stolen base pace. That you'll take that every day, especially if you were scrimping and scraping in that category. Britton, you got your eyes on any other speedsters or run producers this coming weekend?
I've got my eyes on Elvis Andrus, who is playing for the White Sox right now. And I know, I get it, like old beat up Elvis Andrus, and he's been in the league for so long, but he's 34 years old. I'm 45. I wish I could go back to 34. I can't. We consider 34 years old, but he's been hitting at the top of the White Sox lineup, and he has been red hot, more like white hot. So White Sox hot, right? He's hitting at the top of the order. He's been batting .303 with 10 runs scored this month. Today, he stayed hot. He went 2 for 5 with a home run. And I think we forget just what a prolific base stealer he has been throughout his entire career. And I know he's on the back end of his career, but he still knows how to steal bases. He's had stolen bases of 42, 25, 31, 3 years ago. So Elvis Andrus is at that point in his career where he's on the back end. This is kind of Oakland kind of got rid of him, and so he signed with the White Sox, and so he's batting leadoff, and he's on a mission, and he's red hot right now, and I think he's somebody to look at because most people are just going to say, oh, Elvis Andrus, give me a break. I want nothing to do with that. But if you look at his numbers recently, he's scoring runs, he's getting on base, and he is going to steal bases. So I really like Elvis Andrus.
Yeah, he is.
I love this call.
In Tim Anderson in many ways.
And he's outproducing what Tim Anderson was doing, quite frankly. And Tim Anderson is not expected back until the postseason, so we don't care about that. He really helps in every category. He came over to the White Sox on the 19th and already has 4 home runs and 2 stolen bases. And now for the past 10 games has hit in that leadoff spot. So he's going to get the plate appearances. This is one of those rare finds for this time of year. Britton, you talk about this is what your podcast is all about. This guy leading off. That is so huge that we have a leadoff hitter that is producing available to us at this time of year. And just because of his age and his drop off to an extent over the past couple of seasons, people aren't even going to pay any attention to it.
Yeah, currently rostered in 70% of the main event, only 10% in online championships going into this past week. Would expect those numbers to raise quite considerably after this FAAB period. All right, let's get into some guys that might have some good opportunity ahead of themselves. A lot of games to be played this week across the league. There are more than a handful of teams that only have a 5-day work week, but on the other side of that, Tampa Bay, Toronto, Cleveland, Houston, Miami, the Mets, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Arizona have no days off. Boston, Baltimore, New York Yankees, Seattle, Washington, and Colorado, they are the teams that have 2 days off. Colorado also on top of that is away for all 5 of those days. So you can safely leave them off of your FAAB bid list if they're hitters. There are a few doubleheaders, more than a few doubleheaders this coming week. On Monday, Texas is at Miami for 2. On Tuesday, Tampa Bay will play 2 in Toronto, and Pittsburgh will play 2 in Cincinnati. On Saturday, Minnesota will play 2 in Cleveland, while Cincinnati plays 2 more in St. Louis. So a whole lot of doubleheaders that'll give some teams a couple extra games. So despite the 1 day off, St. Louis, Minnesota still has 7 games. Cincinnati has 9 games. Kevin, you talked about that last week. And then a couple teams have 8 thanks to the doubleheaders of Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Toronto. They all have 8. And on top of that, Toronto will be home all week. They will be hosting Tampa and Baltimore throughout the course of the week. Just as a note, the last time Tampa Bay went up to Toronto, Brooks Raley and Ryan Thompson, they were on the restricted list. And then the last time the Orioles went up across the border, Anthony Santander and Keegan Aiken, they were on the restricted list as well. So all their rosters are a little bit different. They're going to have some new players. We'll have to wait and see if there's any new names or if any status has changed for these four guys. But if you are rostering any of these guys, especially like Santander or even Raley or Aiken, if you were hoping to plan on streaming him for whatever reason, then you want to make a note of that. So with all that in mind, guys, Britton, I'm going to start with you. Who looks like they could take advantage of the opportunities ahead of themselves for this coming week?
Okay, I know this is a little off the beaten path because when you think about the Yankees, you think about Aaron Judge, but I've been looking at Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I know he's had a rough start to the year, but he has been red hot lately. The Yankees, because of injuries and other issues, have batted him cleanup. And as a result, in September, he's hit two home runs and has stolen 3 bases in the heart of the lineup, but he's been thrown away. But he's really heating up, and he's one of 3 players in the Yankees that plays every day. It's Judge, Torres, and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. But he's one of these players that can impact your batting average, home runs, and stolen bases here at the end. So I really think that he's somebody to look at as one of those contributors that it's just going to be hard to find at this time of year.
Yeah, when you move Judge to the leadoff spot to get him more at-bats and more opportunities for hitting home runs, somebody's got to get moved up into that cleanup spot, and IKF is filling that role nicely,
I know,
as you mentioned.
I know, batting cleanup, it's crazy, but this is what's going on with the Yankees, and if you're batting cleanup for the Yankees, I really like that opportunity.
There you go. All right, Kevin, anybody else out there looking to take advantage of the opportunity or the extra games that they have this week?
Yeah, this is pretty specific to either daily leagues or NFBC where we split the week. Michael Chavis gets a trip to Cincinnati for the first 3 days this week and is set to face 2 left-handers. He's hit much better against lefties this season. 8 of his home runs and only 165 plate appearances is nice as well. And when I really wanted to find somebody to take advantage of their series against Cincinnati, either a Pirate this week or a Cardinal. Now, the Cardinals we like are highly rostered in most leagues. Nobody really worth bringing up. But I asked you, Adam, when Todd Zola was with us, been almost a month ago now, I think, at least 3 weeks ago, if there had been much of a difference in what the Angels were doing to stop stolen bases with Thor gone. And they're still bad. But Cincinnati has blown past them. They have given up far more stolen bases for the entire season on a per game basis than even the Angels. And so they play 9 games this week. I thought it would be easy to find somebody that's going to steal bases against the Reds. And I really could not find that. However, a guy like Michael Chavis does have a stolen base on the year, might vulture one here, but I'm not using him just because I think he's going to steal a base. He's also at Great American Small Park facing 2 lefties for the first half of the week. So I think he's a good all-round play. The possibility that he might snag a base against him would just be icing on the cake.
Yeah, there's so many variables that go into the fact that Cincinnati has given up all of those. I got to imagine that losing Tyler Stevenson from that moment on, sure is where the
they've blown
uptick
past
went.
him. It's not even close.
Yeah. Yes, and yes, if you are rostering Michael Chavis, because you're looking for the stolen base, then you're listening to you're not listening to this show correctly. Sorry.
Right. But
bonus.
In my draft and holds, if there's a tiebreaker between using a guy, Chavis is probably going to be in a couple of my lineups for the first half of the week.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into our pitchers then, guys. Let's get away from hitters, get into our pitchers. We're just looking at this coming week. We do away with looking too far ahead now since there's only 4 FAAB periods left. So we're looking at our counting stats. Britton, I'm going to start with you here. Wins and Ks in your standard 5x5 categories. These are your counting stats that typically starters have to do with. So who might you be looking at this coming week that has a good opportunity to get you a win and or rack up some Ks if you need them?
I'm going to steal one of Kevin's favorite guys. That's Hunter Brown. I absolutely love Hunter Brown. He's a starting pitcher for the Houston Astros, plus velocity, plus curve. In his first win over Texas, he allowed 3 hits, 1 walk while striking out 5 batters over 6 scoreless innings. What is it with the Houston Astros? I don't know. They rack up such great talent as far as pitching goes. Of course, you got Framber Valdez, Christian Javier, Lance McCullers, Luis Garcia. It's like the list never ends, and the rich get richer with Hunter Brown, who is their 4-year-old phenom in the organization, and now he's coming up, and I think he is somebody that playing for a great organization, a great team with the stuff to do it. I think he's a must-add.
It doesn't look like Verlander's coming back this coming week through a bullpen session, I think, on Friday. They're not going to be rushing him back. They're just going to want him warm enough for the playoffs. And so he'll come back before the end of the regular season, but no reason to rush him back this week. So Brown should get to his 2 starts for the Astros this week, both on Monday and over the weekend. Kevin, you got a couple other guys on here. Won't you let us know in what order you might be looking at these guys?
Yeah, and the other thing about Hunter Brown, he couldn't have 2 better matchups for a right-handed pitcher. He gets the Tigers and the A's in the same week if Verlander's not back next Sunday. That's worth a large chunk of your FAAB money in and of itself, even if this is the only 2 starts he makes all season. And it's matchups I'm looking at in the other places I'm going. The Texas Rangers are a top 7 or 8 team versus left-handed pitching, but they're bottom 5 versus righties. And Luis Patino is available out there. He's scheduled to get a start against the Rangers next weekend. So I really like Patino against the Rangers. And then I like a couple of Rangers pitchers due to their matchups. I've brought this guy up multiple times this season, almost exclusively when it's a 2-start week, definitely when it's good matchups. Glenn Otto, the walks are still an issue. This is something that could backfire. This is a guy that if you really are in need of wins and strikeouts and it's worth risking the ratio blow up, he's got a couple of nice matchups. He gets Miami, the absolute best team, or one of the best teams that we can face in the league. And then he gets Tampa Bay next weekend. Tampa has not been very good against righties this season, probably worse than most people realize. So I expect double-digit strikeouts from Glenn Otto this week. Hopefully at least 1 win, and hopefully doesn't blow up my ratios. And the same can be said in 1 start for Dane Dunning, another guy that's been pretty good some starts, not great others, but he gets the Oakland Athletics this week. So I'll take my chances there where I need a guy, and he's available as well.
Nice. A lot of options there, which is
many more options than last week.
Yes, I was going to say that, which is not normally the case this time of year, which is nice. All right, let's look at chipping away at our ratios, guys, our ERA, our WHIP. A lot of people think it's a little bit too difficult to do this late in the season, but again, these are the categories that can move both up and down for anybody. So people could be getting blown up and moving down towards you, and you can chip away and move yourself up as well. So don't forget about them. Kevin, I'm going to start with you here, and who might be helping you chip away at those ratios this coming week or beyond?
Yeah, when I brought up Karinchak a couple weeks ago, you talked about there being multiple options in the Cleveland bullpen, and I really like Sam Hinges as well. He gets multiple innings quite often. In fact, 3 of his last 4 have been 4 outs or more, 2 of those being 2 full innings, and 0 earned runs during that time. 60 strikeouts in 53 innings pitched on the season. I know we're talking about ratios here, but the strikeouts are an added bonus. And he does have the ratios that we're talking about here, a 2.72 ERA on the season. He's given up 1 earned run since the All-Star break. It's amazing what he and, as you mentioned, other guys in that Cleveland bullpen have been doing for most of the season now.
Nice. Yeah. These bullpen guys that are playing on teams that are holding leads, that are doing what they need to do, they can be the difference, especially as we get closer to the season where you just don't have pitchers pitching. Especially, we'll talk about it in a couple of weeks, but that final.
And we talk about a good bullpen helping our starting pitching, especially when it comes to wins. The same can be said for a closer, in spite of Clase finally blowing a save. But nobody expects that to continue. If these guys come in and the team takes the lead, holding that possibility of a win for us as well.
There you go. All right, Britton, any other pitchers out there that are going to help chip away at some ratios for this coming week?
I think anybody in the bullpen for the Seattle Mariners can fit that bill. Literally, Andre Munoz, Matt Brash, Matt Fiesta, Penn Murphy. They brought in Matthew Boyd from the Detroit Tigers fame. The Seattle Mariners has like the most underrated bullpen in all of Major League Baseball. It is fantastic, but I know from personal experience, I know who not to bring in, and that is AJ Puck. He's got the stuff. Did y'all see what happened to him on Friday? I got so excited. I was like, okay, here we go. It's AJ Puck time in Oakland. Oh no, he went in he was in a 3-0 game, came in for the save in the 9th, gave up 5 earned runs in 0.2 innings pitched, lost to the Chicago White Sox 5-3. I'm like, is this ever going to happen for AJ Puck? I don't know. But
were you watching the game, Britton?
I did.
I'm blaming you for the couple of
it's It's totally my fault. Oh, it was so sad because, of course, I picked him up last week in my 12-team FAAB leagues because I know in one league I've got like Brandon Hughes and I'm just trying to scrape things together. So I pick up AJ Puck, and then here he comes with a quick 5 earned runs. And I think I lost 3 points in some kind of categories because of AJ Puck. I'm like, University of Florida, that figures. But I went to UT. They've been beating us down for years. But so that was one thing I was looking at was AJ Puck. I hope he bounces back. But thank y'all for letting me vent a little bit. I feel so much better.
We know if we see the percentages of Puck's rostership go down next week, it's because he's off of all of Britton's teams.
It really is. But you know who I would consider, and let me run this by you guys and see what you think. What about DL Hall in Baltimore? He got called up. He was a little erratic in his first call up, but it's only 6 innings pitched. He's got 11 K per 9. He's got the stuff. When I watch him pitch, it is electric. Do y'all have any interest in taking a flyer on DL Hall and as a long reliever in Baltimore?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about him either last week or the week before for exactly the situation you're talking about.
And there's always an opportunity in Baltimore with Felix Bautista getting arm fatigue recently that the rest of the bullpen is going to get a little bit extra work as they try to save him a little bit. I'm not saying they're removing him from the closer role or he'll even miss any time per se, but if that's the case for him, guy throws 100, 101 on a regular basis, it's not too surprising. So if that means Hall gets a couple extra opportunities per week, rather than just the 1 or 2, then as long as he doesn't have another blow up, like he's already had 2 out of his 4 outings have been less than ideal as far as all the ratios go. But,
his ERA is inflated. There's no doubt about that.
Bit.
But yeah, his stuff is so good though. I just want to keep an eye on him.
All right, let's move in as I talk about one closer that's obviously not available. Let's talk into our last pitching category. That is the saves category, everybody's favorite category. Kevin, start here with you. Who might you be looking at to fill in some save opportunities for you?
This is a maybe, but I'm going right back to what you were just talking about. Really depends on Felix Bautista. Was the last report I saw was he had played catch on Saturday, and depending on how he felt after that, may have been available Saturday or Sunday. They go out and give up 17 runs to the Red Sox, and we don't get to find out if he was available or not because they didn't use him anyway. So really monitoring this situation the rest of Saturday, and for our listeners, all day Sunday. Fortunately, typically all but one game has ended, and it's usually ended as well by the time we have to get our bids in. But if Bautista either can't go or is going to be limited, I'm looking at Dylan Tate in Baltimore. In his last 4 appearances, he's got 2 wins and 2 saves. We can't get those. Too late for that. Would have been amazing to get that from a reliever. But he's probably the guy now with Lopez gone if Bautista does have lingering issues upcoming. So monitoring this situation really closely, and if it looks like Bautista might either miss time or be taken out of the role for a little bit or be limited, I might add Dylan Tate in a couple spots.
All right. Besides the Baltimore situation, Bruno, you have your eye on any other bullpens that might be giving different opportunities to different pitchers at the end of games?
The one I was looking at is in Miami. Tanner Scott has performed well, but he's also blown some saves. He's been in the doghouse recently. And the guy that the Miami Marlins traded for from the Dodgers, Dylan Floro, who was hurt at the beginning of the year, going through some rough spots, but since the All-Star break, he's been playing really well. 18 innings pitched with a 2.5 ERA, 1.28 whip, which is nothing to write home about it. But in the Miami bullpen, that'll put you at the top of the list. His K/per walk is 19-6, and most importantly, so he finally got the opportunity for a save chance. I think it was like his 4th on the year, but this past Friday, Tanner Scott was used in the 7th. Floro was used in the 9th. He had a clean inning and got the save. So this may be a harbinger of things to come. Tanner Scott working some early innings after he's been blowing some saves, and now let Floro finally get that chance that I'm pretty sure he was traded for. So Dylan Floro is someone to keep an eye on, possibly for a few saves. Every save counts towards the end, and it looks like he may have the first crack at the role here from here on out.
Man, especially at this time of year, man. Possession is 9/10 of the law. So if you're giving somebody the opportunity and they're taking advantage of it, you got to assume, unless it's due to arm fatigue or overusage or something like that, that a change could be in the air, an opportunity could be taken advantage of for sure. So I like that call out a lot. All right, final category, guys, our wild card category. Kevin, I'll start here with you. Again, this is for any particular reason, maybe somebody we talked about, maybe somebody that didn't fit into a category we talked about earlier. It could be a stash, even at this time of year, whatever it is. Who might you have your eye on for whatever reason?
Yeah, I already talked about him earlier in the show. It came up and I thought it was relevant at the time. But yeah, if he's available and if you are in need of stolen bases and you have an extra spot, which is really tough this time of year, Harrison Bader is the guy. I think if he starts his rehab assignment within the next day or two, hopefully on Sunday, even if it's for another reason, if it doesn't happen Sunday, that's going to give me concern that something's not quite right, because they did say as early as Sunday. That's what I want to see first. Then add him. He'll be much more expensive next week when you're trying to make that add, as he will probably be called up. I did see that it probably would not be prior to the 20th, which I think is their first game against Pittsburgh the following week. So let me double check that. I don't want to be saying that's wrong, but I did see I did see it wouldn't be until then. I want to make sure I'm right about the teams I'm talking about. Yeah, They play Pittsburgh at home on the 20th. They have an off day next Monday. So that's probably his date to come back if everything goes well this week. Probably not be able to use him this week, but once again, he'll be much less expensive this week. And if you don't grab him, somebody else might. He won't be available at all next week.
Yeah, and obviously be monitoring what he does in those rehab starts. If he steals just one base, then feel strongly about putting him right back into your lineup the following week when he comes back, when he makes his New York Yankees debut. All right, Britton, last recommendation here. Who is your wild card selection for the end of the show?
I've got the wildest wild card in the history of wild cards, and I'll talk a little bit about his background too. It's TJ Friedl from the Cincinnati Reds. He bats leadoff against righties. In the last 8 games, he's hitting .364 with 4 home runs, and he's got 6 stolen bases from the year. He is literally out of nowhere. And when I say nowhere, he was an undrafted free agent in the 2016 draft. He was signed by the Reds after the draft to your standard free agent contract. All right, so let's talk a little bit. Who is this guy? Why is he a major league starter batting leadoff? It's such a great story. I absolutely love it. Okay, so his real name is not TJ. It is, in fact, Terry Lee Friedl. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But as you will notice, there is no J in Terry Lee Friedl. Anyway, he calls himself TJ. So I think that adds to the mystery a little bit of what this wild card is. Where's the J come from? I don't know. I just bat lead off and get on base and hit home runs and really hot lately. Okay, if that's true, let's take a look at this guy a little bit. So undrafted free agent. So he signs with the Reds. His first professional at-bat was in rookie league with the Billings Mustangs. In his first at-bat, he hit a home run. And he hits another home run in that same game. He grinds through the minors, literally, from the Mustangs to the Dayton Dragons. Then he goes to the Pensacola Blue Wahoos. We all know the Blue Wahoos. And then the Chattanooga Lookouts. And then finally makes it to AAA in 2021, the Louisville Bats. He gets called up by the Reds, and on September the 18th, 2021, he had his first major league recorded hit was you guessed it, a home run. TJ Friedl is the ultimate undrafted free agent wild card. I'm rooting for him. He was undrafted, worked his way up the ranks. He's now a big league starter, batting leadoff for the Reds. I say, let's just go. Let's go, TJ Friedl. You go, man. You made it. He went to the University of Nevada. He didn't get a scholarship. He walked on. Talk about an underdog story. He's kind of Rudy at Notre Dame or something, except he's a much taller with free-flowing hair. But so that's my wild card. That's a long-winded wild card, but that's TJ Friedl. He's been an underdog his entire life. He's 27 years old. He's got the opportunity. I hope he takes it and just has the best year ever.
I love that he's leading off against righties, like you said. I hope he can take advantage of this 9-game week that the Reds have and bat plenty of games against lefties as well, because I think they are set to face a couple of lefties throughout the course of the week as well.
Just 2, I think, of the 9. So.
All right, so he should, even if he seats those 2 games, he'll get the full 7-game work week throughout the course of the week. Love the call out. Love the deep dive into who TJ Friedl is, though. So it's really good to know who the players are that you are spending your FAAB on.
And if any listener of your wonderful podcast knows where in the world the J comes from, it is killing me.
It's like the Homer J. It's like Homer J. Simpson. It's like maybe the J is just there. It's just
why is it there? It's not your name. I don't know. Someone tell me. I love it.
All right, with all of that in mind, I think that's going to do it for our recommendations. Kevin, do you have anything to sign us off with as far as any added strategy or recommendations or words of wisdom to our listeners?
Just a reminder, right? Something everybody knows, but we're head-to-head playoffs are, if they didn't start in your league this past week, they're definitely probably starting this week. Definitely probably. I guess I just said that. Pay attention to your opponent's team and their tendencies. If they have 4 good closers and they typically play 3 or 4 of them, and you only have 1 or 2, play 9 starters. You're not winning saves, right? Punt it. Punt a category in head-to-head playoffs. And in almost every head-to-head playoff that I'm in, I can find a category I should probably punt. And I think most people that play head-to-head or have played for very long realize that, but just one of those things to remind yourself is when you're looking at your lineups. And if you have guys, there's a lot of teams that don't play on Monday this week. Double check back on Tuesday morning, not just at your lineup and the lineups of the teams that your guys are playing in. Check your opponent's lineups again, see what they've moved around, see if you need to adjust to that as well, especially when it comes to saves and stolen bases. There may not be a reason to play a stolen base guy that's not going to give you anything else if it's pretty likely your opponent is going to beat you in stolen bases anyway.
Well said. And in my head-to-head playoff matchup, I am facing off against Aaron Judge, so home runs have been tanked already. All right. Brian, I want to thank you once again, man, for joining us. Can you let everybody know where they can find you and what you do in this wonderful world we live in?
I really appreciate the opportunity to come on. Adam, Kevin, thank you so much. I've had a blast. I love talking baseball with you guys, and the information that y'all give fantasy baseball players is always spot on. Again, my name is Britton Allan, and I post all my YouTube clips on my Twitter feed, which is just my name, which isn't the most creative thing in the world, but it's effective. It's at Britton Allan, BrittonAllan. And I make YouTube clips for Triple Play Podcast, which if you go to Triple Play Fantasy at the YouTube channel, you'll see my little thumbnail, which is a handsome touched up photo of myself. At least I think that's me. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, it says Britton's lineups. And then I go through, I call it 3 as a magic number, where I go through all the lineups from all 30 teams every week and see which hitters are moving up the lineup. Like TJ Friedel, of course, is one that I've talked about several times before. I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Yeah, Britton, thanks, man, for coming on, taking the time, and breaking down some really good recommendations for everybody to consider this week. Make sure you're checking out Britton's podcast, 3 is a Magic Number, on the Triple Play Fantasy YouTube
I got
channel.
one quick thing to add, Adam. A little while back, 3 or 4 weeks ago, probably, Eric Cross put out a little questionnaire about podcasts and different categories, and I knew who was going to win Best Voice. We all knew Derek Van Riper would win Best Voice, but I gave Britton Allan a shout out for Best Voice for podcast.
Sure. What?
Eric Cross's. Yeah.
This is news to me. That's awesome. Thank you, Kevin.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Deserved. Hopefully you guys listening in agree with that shout out as well.
I really do appreciate that. I listen to myself, and I think I sound like Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do I sound like such a stoner? I don't know, but thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for episode 76 of On the Wire. Please make sure to subscribe, share, and review the podcast wherever you're listening. We will be back every Sunday with detailed FAAB breakdowns throughout the rest of the season. Of course, keep an eye out for Kevin's companion article over at pitcherlist.com. That comes out every Sunday afternoon as well. You can follow myself on the Twitter at 80grade. That's all spelled out. Kevin is at Hasting Kevin. And of course, follow the pod itself at On the Wire Pod. I'd like to once again thank our guest, Britton Allan, for joining us. Follow him at Britton Allan. I am Adam Howe, and on behalf of Kevin Hasting, thanks for listening. With that, we bid you goodbye.